"I'm not worth much, sir, but I can spread my legs," the homeless woman told the notorious gunman. Everett Jackson's killing hand froze on his whiskey glass. In 15 blood-soaked years of shooting people, he'd heard every desperate offer and rejected them. But this woman's eyes held something different. Not seduction, but survival's raw honesty as she knelt in Guthrie's mud.
Hello, compliments of the season. If you love heartwarming stories about life in times past, then you'd enjoy these stories. Comment where you're watching from, like and share these videos with loved ones as you enjoy them. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel too. My team and I have something free and beautiful for you once we hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. It will be shared in the community. You know, we go to great lengths to make these videos, and your support means a lot to us. Therefore, we plan to give back to you once we are able to, so be a part of what we are building.
"I'm not worth much, sir, but I can spread my legs," the homeless woman told the notorious gunman. The words hung in the thick Oklahoma heat like smoke from a dying fire. Everett Jackson's hand froze mid-reach for his whiskey glass. In 15 blood-soaked years of killing, he'd heard every desperate offer a human could make. But this bruised woman kneeling in Guthrie's mud wasn't offering seduction. She was offering survival's last brutal truth. Molly Shawn was 28 years old, and she had nothing left to lose. Not dignity, not hope, not even the simple mercy of death. Her torn dress hung off shoulders that had once carried the proud weight of a successful seamstress. Her face, beautiful beneath the bruises, told a story that made hardened men look away. 3 months ago, everything had been different. Molly owned a thriving shop in Tulsa, her skilled hands creating dresses for merchants' wives and dance hall girls alike. She never judged. She just sewed, saved her money, and dreamed of expanding. Her younger brother Garrett lived above the shop, working odd jobs, always promising to find his path. Then came that terrible morning when the marshal knocked on her door. Garrett had been shot outside a gambling house, dead before sunrise. Molly's grief was absolute, drowning, but what came after shattered her completely. The creditors arrived within days, men in dark suits with colder eyes. Garrett hadn't just gambled, he'd borrowed from dangerous people, signing papers with Molly's shop as collateral, papers she'd never seen, debts she didn't know existed. The leader was Virgil Krane, a thin man with a snake's smile. "Your brother owed us $3,000, Miss Shawn. The shop don't cover half of it." "I'll pay," Molly had begged. "Give me time. I'll work. "Time's expensive," Virgil interrupted. "But we're reasonable men. We'll take the shop now, and you got other ways to settle the rest." Within 10 days, they took everything. Her sewing machines, her fabric, her grandmother's quilts, even the small photograph of her parents. All of it sold or stolen. But the debt remained. Then came the 3 weeks Molly couldn't speak about without her mind fracturing. The room above a saloon where Virgil's associates took turns, the rough hands, the mocking laughter, the moment when she stopped feeling human and became just meat for men's appetites. They used her, traded her, broke her in ways that left no visible scars but destroyed everything inside. When they finally tired of her, fevered and half dead, they dumped her in Guthrie like spoiled goods. Molly had crawled through that town for 2 days, every door closed, every face turned away, until she heard the whispers about the man in black who drank alone at the Last Chance Saloon. Everett Jackson, the killer, the gunman who'd murdered more men than smallpox. And Molly thought, what's one more monster when you've already survived a dozen? So she knelt in the mud outside that saloon and made her offer, her last offer, the only thing she thought she had left to give. Everett Jackson studied the woman kneeling before him with eyes that had measured 1,000 men for death. But this wasn't a man, and this wasn't about killing. This was something else entirely. He saw the fever flush on her cheeks, the tremor in her hands that wasn't just fear, the hollow look of someone who'd already died inside and was just waiting for the body to follow. Something twisted in his chest, something he'd buried 3 years ago with his sister Clara. "When did you last eat?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Molly blinked, confused. That wasn't the response she'd expected. 2 days, maybe 3. Everett stood slowly, his shadow falling across her like a dark wing. "Stand up." Molly tried. Her legs betrayed her. The fever and starvation and broken soul all conspired at once, and she collapsed forward into the mud. She didn't feel Everett catch her, didn't feel him lift her with surprising gentleness for a man whose hands had dealt so much death. She was already drifting into the gray space where consciousness ended and fever dreams began. When Molly next surfaced, she was moving, a horse beneath her, strong arms holding her upright, the Oklahoma prairie rolling past in waves of brown grass and endless sky. "Where?" She tried to speak. "Don't talk," Everett said from behind her. "Save your strength." The cabin appeared like a mirage near the Cimarron River, 12 miles from anywhere that mattered. Simple, isolated, the kind of place a man went when he wanted the world to forget him. Everett carried Molly inside and laid her on his own bed. He moved with efficient purpose, gathering supplies: cool water from the well, clean cloths, whiskey for medicine, not drinking, a tin of beef broth he heated over the stove. For 3 days, Molly drifted between fever and darkness. Sometimes she woke screaming, reliving those 3 weeks. Everett would be there, a cool cloth on her forehead, his voice low and steady. "You're safe. Nobody's touching you. You're safe." He tended her wounds with hands that had delivered death, but now offered only care. Changed the cloths when fever burned through them. Spooned broth between her lips when she could swallow, sat in the chair beside the bed through the long nights, his rifle across his lap, watching over her like some dark guardian angel. On the 2nd day, Cooper Hayes stopped by. The ranch hand's eyes went wide seeing a woman in Everett's bed. "Boss, everyone knows that you keep alone." Everett's voice went cold as a January wind. "Tell anyone she's here, you're done. Understand?" Cooper nodded quickly and left. On the 4th morning, Molly woke truly awake for the first time. The fever had broken. Her body ached, but her mind was clear. She found herself in clean clothes, a man's shirt far too large, in a stranger's bed, in a place she didn't recognize. And the Notorious Gunman sat in the corner, watching her with eyes that held no threat, only a careful, guarded something that might have been concern. Molly's first instinct was terror. She sat up too fast, pain shooting through her ribs, eyes searching for exits. Everett remained perfectly still. "You're safe," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Those words, she'd heard them before, from Virgil's men, right before they did hurt her. "Why am I here?" Her voice came out hoarse. "You collapsed. You had fever. I brought you here to recover." Molly's eyes narrowed. "What do you want from me?" Everett stood slowly, keeping his movements visible and non-threatening. "Nothing. You needed help? I gave it." He gestured to the table. "There's food. Eat when you're ready. I'll be outside." He left before she could respond. Molly sat there, stunned. In her experience, men didn't help women without expecting payment, especially not women who'd offered what she'd offered. The days that followed established a careful rhythm. Everett left at dawn, returned at dusk. He provided clean clothes, simple meals, space to heal. He never touched her, never even came close, kept a respectful distance that made Molly more confused than comforted. She didn't trust it, couldn't trust it, so she waited for the trap to spring. While he was gone, Molly explored the cabin. It was surprisingly organized for a killer's lair. Books lined one shelf, poetry, history, even a worn Bible. A photograph sat face down on the desk. She didn't dare turn it over. Then she found the box, hidden beneath a loose floorboard under the bed. Inside were letters, newspaper clippings, and a small tin-type photograph of a young woman with kind eyes. Molly's hands trembled as she reached for the first letter. Looking for something? She spun. Everett stood in the doorway, earlier than usual. His face was unreadable. I'm sorry, I wasn't... Weren't what? Checking if I'm the monster they say I am? His voice held no anger, just tired resignation. Molly stood, clutching the box. Are you? Everett was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to the table, poured 2 cups of coffee, and sat. An invitation. Molly joined him, wary but curious. I had a sister once, Clara. She's why I know how to tend fever, how to be gentle when everything in you wants to break. What happened to her? She died. My fault. He looked up, meeting Molly's eyes. You remind me of her. Same look, like you've seen the worst of what men can do. Molly felt tears burning. I had a brother, Garrett. His debts, they took everything. The men who hurt you, they have names? Why? Because maybe you're not the only one looking for a reason to survive. For the first time since Garrett died, Molly felt something other than emptiness. Not hope, not yet, but something close. If Molly's courage is touching your heart, subscribe for more powerful stories of survival and redemption. A week passed like water finding its level. Molly's strength returned in increments. She began cooking, unable to sit idle while Everett provided everything. She organized the cabin, bringing order to the chaos of a man who'd stopped caring about comfort years ago. Everett noticed the changes. He'd come home to the smell of stew simmering, to floors swept clean, to curtains opened, letting light into spaces that had lived in shadow. It felt like something he didn't deserve, something dangerous. One evening, Cooper arrived with supplies and news that made Everett's face turn to stone. Marshal Crane's been asking questions in town about a woman, dark hair, late 20s, came from Tulsa way. Molly felt ice flood her veins. Who's Marshal Krane? Cooper glanced at Everett nervously, then left quickly. Tell me, Molly demanded when they were alone. Who is he? Everett was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he poured 2 whiskeys and began talking. Marshal Dixon Krane owns me. Has for 3 years. His voice was flat, dead. My sister Clara ended up in an Oklahoma City brothel. I was working railroad jobs, sending money home to our mother. Honest work, good pay. He drank. Came back to find Clara dead in a brothel fire. Our mother died a week later from grief. I blamed myself. Should have been there. Should have protected them. Molly's hand moved toward his, but stopped short. I spiraled, took gun work, became what I thought I deserved to be. Everett's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, Krane came to me with a job. Said outlaws were moving stolen gold in a stagecoach, gave me descriptions, route, everything, told me to stop them. His hands trembled around the glass. I stopped that stagecoach, killed everyone inside, man, woman, driver. Then I saw it. What? A child's doll. Fell out when the door opened. Everett's voice broke. They weren't outlaws. They were a family. Samuel and Ruth Brennan had 2 daughters. Molly's breath caught. Krane had lied, set the whole thing up. Later told me he'd framed them, that he'd killed the real outlaws and needed the Brennans dead for land fraud schemes. Everett finally looked at her. He holds it over me, makes me do jobs, collection, intimidation, sometimes worse. I'm his dog, and he's got the leash made of my guilt. Silence filled the cabin like smoke. I was in that room for 3 weeks. Virgil Krane and his men, they used me like I was nothing, laughed while they did it, passed me between them like a bottle. She met Everett's eyes. When they were done, they threw me away, said my brother's debt was paid in full. Everett's expression hardened with rage, not at her, but for her. Virgil Krane is Dixon Krane's cousin, he said quietly. Understanding crashed over both of them. They were both victims of the same monsters. Molly couldn't sleep that night. Everett's story circled her mind like a vulture. The Brennan family, the manipulation, 3 years of slavery to a corrupt marshal. She kept seeing that hidden box, the letters she'd barely glimpsed before Everett caught her. When his breathing from the other room settled into sleep's rhythm, Molly moved. She retrieved the box carefully, brought it to the table, and lit a candle. The letters were worse than she'd imagined. Correspondence between Dixon Krane and various associates, details about removing obstacles and securing territorial claims, references to the Broken Bow massacre that made her blood run cold. But what caught her trained eye were the inconsistencies. Her father, Judge Harold Shawn, had taught her to read legal documents before he died. She'd spent years in his study, learning to spot forgeries, understand evidence, recognize when official papers had been manipulated. These documents were a prosecutor's dream. Krane had orchestrated everything. He'd identified the real outlaws, killed them quietly, then framed the innocent Brennan family, used Everett as his weapon and his scapegoat. Newspaper clippings confirmed it. The outlaws killed at Broken Bow had been wanted men, but they died 2 weeks before the massacre in a completely different county. The dates didn't match, the locations didn't match. The whole story was a lie built on lies. Molly worked through the night, copying every document by candlelight. Her seamstress hands, trained for precision, reproduced each letter exactly. She folded the copies and sewed them into the lining of her dress with stitches so fine they were invisible. Dawn was breaking when she finished. She returned the box, erasing all evidence of her night's work. When Everett woke, she was cooking breakfast like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Molly had spent 3 weeks as a victim, powerless and broken. She'd crawled through Guthrie expecting to die, but her father's training hadn't died with him. She had skills, knowledge, the ability to see what others missed. She had weapons they didn't know about. Over the following days, Molly began asking careful questions. Where did Krane operate? Who were his associates? What were his patterns? She framed it as curiosity, as wanting to understand the danger. Everett grew suspicious. "Why are you asking about Krane?" "Because he's looking for me. I need to know what I'm facing." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Cooper brought more news. Krane was getting impatient, asking more aggressive questions. Some said he'd be riding out to Everett's place soon, for a job, Cooper said nervously, and maybe other business. That night, Molly made a decision. She couldn't tell Everett what she'd found. Not yet. He was too broken by guilt, too controlled by Krane's manipulation. He'd freeze, he'd surrender. But she wouldn't. Not anymore. If Krane was coming, she'd be ready. And this time, the desperate woman kneeling in the mud would be the one holding all the cards. She just had to survive long enough to play them. The warning came on a Tuesday morning. Cooper rode up fast, his horse lathered with sweat. "Boss, Krane's coming, now. Got 5 deputies with him." Everett's face went pale. "How long?" "Hour, maybe less." Cooper's eyes darted to Molly. "He says the woman's wanted for theft in Tulsa. Says he's got papers." Molly felt her stomach drop. Virgil had fabricated charges. Of course he had. Everett grabbed her arm, not rough, but urgent. "There's a trail through the river bend. Follow it east. You'll reach a settlement by nightfall. Take my horse. Go now." "No." "Molly, you don't understand what he'll—" "I understand exactly what he'll do." Her voice was steel. "I've been running since they took everything from me. I'm done running. This isn't courage, it's suicide. And what you're doing, Molly shot back, letting him control you for 3 years? That's not survival, Everett. That's just slower dying. His jaw tightened. You don't know him, don't know what he's capable of. I know what his cousin did to me. I know exactly what these men are capable of. She stepped closer. But I also know what he's done to you, and I won't let him keep doing it. What are you talking about? Molly reached into her dress, pulled out the copied documents. I found your box. I copied everything, every letter, every piece of evidence proving Krane set up the Broken Bow massacre. Everett's face went through shock, anger, fear. You had no right. I had every right. You saved my life. Now I'm trying to save yours. By getting yourself killed? By fighting back. The sound of horses cut through their argument. Too soon, too fast. Everett's hand went to his gun, but Molly saw the tremor, saw the way his breathing changed. He was already defeated, already trapped. The door burst open. Marshal Dixon Krane stood in the frame, tall and cold-eyed, with 5 deputies behind him. He looked at Everett with the smile of a man who owned what he surveyed. Everett, been too long. His eyes slid to Molly. And this must be Miss Shawn, the seamstress who forgot about her obligations. Molly forced herself to stand straight, to meet his gaze without flinching. Krane stepped inside like he owned the place. I'll make this simple. The lady comes with me to settle her debts, and you, Everett, have one more job. There's a rancher named Hayes causing problems with some land I need. You'll convince him to sell. Hayes is Cooper's father, Everett said quietly. I know. That's why you're the right man for it. Crane's smile widened. Still my dog after all these years, aren't you? Everett's gun hand trembled. His breathing went shallow. And Molly realized with cold clarity, this was the moment everything would either break or be reborn. If you're holding your breath right now, subscribe, because what happens next will change everything. Everett's hand hovered near his gun, shaking like a leaf in a storm. Krane saw it and laughed. Still can't do it, can you? 3 years and you're still the same broken man. He turned to his deputies. This is the famous Everett Jackson, killer of the Brennan family. I keep him on a tight leash for everyone's protection. The deputies nodded, believing the lie. Believing Krane was the hero controlling a dangerous animal. Now, Miss Shawn, let's discuss your brother's debts. The debts Virgil Krane fabricated? Molly's voice cut through the cabin like a knife. Crane's smile faltered. Careful, girl. False accusations won't help you. Molly reached into her dress and pulled out the documents. These aren't accusations, they're evidence. She unfolded the first letter. Letter from you to Virgil Krane, dated March 1873. The Brennan situation must be handled delicately. Find someone expendable to do the work. Crane's face went cold. Where did you get that? Another letter. The outlaws Fletcher and Wade have been eliminated. Stage the scene at Broken Bow as discussed. Molly's voice grew stronger. The official report says Fletcher and Wade died at Broken Bow. But this letter is dated 2 weeks before that massacre. One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably. Marshal? She's lying. Fabricated documents. These are your words, your signature. Molly held up a newspaper clipping. Samuel and Ruth Brennan, their daughters Ada and Nell, ages 8 and 6. You murdered them to steal their land claim. Enough. Krane drew his weapon, pointing it at Molly. You're under arrest for theft, slander, and interfering with territorial law. Everett stepped between them, his paralysis breaking. Don't. Move, dog, or I'll shoot through you to get to her. The deputies exchanged glances. This wasn't normal procedure. This wasn't lawful. Marshal Krane, one deputy spoke up. Maybe we should take this to town. Let the territorial judge. I am the law here. Crane's composure cracked. This woman is wanted. The documents are forged. And Everett Jackson is my responsibility. Molly's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. Then let's go to Guthrie, right now. Present this evidence in front of the whole town. If I'm lying, arrest me. If I'm telling the truth. She let the implication hang. Crane's eyes darted between Molly, Everett, and his deputies. He was losing control and knew it. Fine. We'll do this proper. But when I prove you're a liar, you'll wish you'd come quietly. He gestured to his men. Bring them both. We settle this on Oklahoma Avenue, where everyone can see. As they mounted horses, Molly caught Everett's eye. He was terrified, still shaking. But something else flickered there now. The tiniest spark of hope. And hope, Molly had learned, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The procession towards Guthrie began. And with it, the reckoning 3 years overdue. By the time they reached Oklahoma Avenue, half of Guthrie had gathered. Word traveled fast in small territories. Marshal bringing in the notorious gunman and some woman. People lined the wooden sidewalks, whispers spreading like wildfire. Krane tried to maintain control, positioning himself as the authority. This woman stands accused of theft and slander. Everett Jackson remains under my supervision for past crimes. Molly stepped forward before he could continue. I have evidence Marshal Krane orchestrated the murder of an innocent family 3 years ago. The crowd murmured. Crane's face reddened. Lies from a desperate criminal. Then let me prove it. Molly held up the documents. Letters in your handwriting, dates that don't match official reports, testimony from witnesses. Cooper Hayes pushed through the crowd. I saw you, Marshal. Saw you meeting with Fletcher and Wade 2 weeks before Broken Bow. They were alive. Then suddenly they were dead, and you blamed the Brennans. Another voice rose. My land claim was threatened too. You said sell or face consequences. More people spoke. A pattern emerging. Years of corruption, intimidation, violence, all controlled by the man wearing the badge. Crane's composure shattered. Enough, you're all conspirators. He turned on Everett. And you're the real killer here. You pulled the trigger on those children. Everett flinched like he'd been shot. You'll always be a killer, Krane continued, vicious now. You'll always be my dog because you're too broken to fight back. Molly's voice cut through his rage. You're not broken, Everett Jackson. Everyone turned to her. I know what you think you are, what he's convinced you are. Her eyes locked on Everett's. I was where your sister was. I know that darkness. I know what it feels like when men take everything and leave you with nothing but shame. Tears ran down her face, but her voice never wavered. You gave me a choice when no one else would. You saw a human being when everyone else saw trash. You showed me I had worth. She stepped closer. Now I'm showing you. You're not a monster. You're a good man who believed a liar. Everett's gun hand steadied. Years of shame cracking open. The Brennans, he said to the crowd, voice breaking. Samuel, Ruth, Ada, and Nell. I killed them believing they were criminals, but Krane lied. He set them up. He's been using that guilt to control me ever since. Crane's face twisted with rage. You're all fools. He drew his weapon. I run this territory. He aimed at Everett, claiming self-defense. Molly moved.
The small derringer she'd taken from Everett's cabin appeared in her hand, not to shoot, but to force Krane's hand before witnesses. Krane pivoted and pistol-whipped her viciously. She fell hard, blood streaming from her temple. The mask was completely off now. The crowd saw the real monster. Everett's shot was clean, purposeful, not the killing blow, but enough. Krane fell, clutching his shoulder, weapon skittering away. The deputies finally acted, surrounding their fallen marshal as testimony crashed over them like thunder.
Spring arrived at the Cimarron River like a promise kept. 3 months had passed since Oklahoma Avenue. 3 months since everything changed. The territorial court had cleared Everett of all charges related to Broken Bow. Victim of manipulation, the judge declared. The real criminal was Dixon Krane, now serving 20 years in Leavenworth Prison. His cousin Virgil got 15 for human trafficking and extortion. Molly's fabricated debts were declared void. Every charge dismissed, every claim against her erased. She was free, truly free, for the first time since Garrett died. The cabin by the river had changed too. Everett built an addition, a proper room for Molly, with windows facing east to catch the sunrise. Separate space, but shared home. He'd never asked her to stay, never had to. Some decisions were made in silence, in the quiet moments between two people who understood each other's scars. This afternoon, they stood by the river, Everett teaching Molly to shoot. Her aim was improving, each shot closer to center. Breathe out slow, he instructed. Squeeze, don't pull. The shot rang true. Molly laughed, genuine and free, a sound that still surprised them both. I'm getting good at this. You're getting dangerous, Everett smiled, something he did more often now. Remind me never to make you angry. Molly's small seamstress business was starting again. Women from Guthrie brought orders. Dresses, quilts, alterations. Word spread about Judge Shawn's daughter, the woman who'd stood up to corrupt power. They came for the sewing, but also for the story, for the hope it represented. Cooper managed Everett's growing ranch operations, legitimate work, honest pay, building something instead of destroying it. Evenings settled over the Oklahoma grassland in shades of gold and amber. They sat on the porch, watching the sun descend. I offered you the only thing I thought I had left, that day outside the saloon. I thought my body was all I was worth. Everett's hand found hers. You showed me I had everything. I just needed someone to see it. You saw me when everyone else saw a monster wearing my skin. That's worth more than redemption, Everett. That's home. Their fingers intertwined naturally, not romance born from desperation, but partnership forged in recognition. Two people who'd fallen to their lowest points, now standing together. Not because they'd saved each other, though perhaps they had, but because they'd seen each other's humanity when no one else would. The cabin lights glowed warm against the prairie darkness. Inside waited dinner, conversation, the simple comfort of not being alone. Outside, the river flowed eternal, washing away old sins, carrying them towards something new. Molly's voice was soft. Sometimes survival isn't about what you're willing to sacrifice. It's about finding someone who refuses to let you. Everett pulled her close. And sometimes home isn't a place. It's a person who knows your worst and stays anyway. Two wounded souls, one shared future, worth fighting for, worth living for. If this story of redemption and second chances moved you, subscribe for more powerful tales of courage in the Wild West.
If you enjoyed this latest story on life in the Old Wild West, then I'm sure you will love the next one coming up. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you can get updates on time. Did I tell you we post new, exciting, heartwarming stories daily? Subscribe now to join us so you won't miss any new stories.